very small, and I set a magnifying glass with it so that they could see it. And so that's probably, the last one I sent was really large. And I have an idea for next year. I can hardly wait.
Oh boy.
And then, let's see. I am nothing, if anything, a collection of tissues which can create a collection of states of mind, not a collection of memories. For my memories are not stored away in a granary or in a library, each neatly cataloged and resting, waiting to be checked out. And that became relevant to me, like getting ready for this. And then last night somebody asked me, well, what kind of poetry do you do, which was hard to explain. And they asked me about regional poetry, and I do indeed do some regional poetry. This also seems relevant, and my talk will quickly follow, and it will speed through to an end. At the viewing, waiting for Uncle Burton's body suddenly to sputter and lurch to life the way his old tractor did each spring, I know he is watching me when I turn on the tool shed's bare bulb, swinging by that ancient cord that disappears up into the dark rafters of that cathedral of bent nails, rust, and kerosene. He is whispering in the bottomlands. It is not just the wind in the pines, but him. Sometimes I hear him walking in the cornfield, just a few rows in. Though I have never parted the stalks to look, I am wholly sure that it is him. Uncle Burton had found a lot of artifacts on his land, especially near the river. Old Catawba pottery sherds and arrowheads. When we were children, Uncle Burton would walk in the woods with my brother and me. He would tell us that he could hear the Indians singing in the woods near the river, that it wasn't just the water and the rocks, but the voices. That he was wholly sure that it was the singing of the first people to live there. Maybe a week before he died, I was out at the old farm and Uncle Burton brought up the voices. He asked me if I remembered him telling me about those Indians singing. Sure I did. My brother did too. I told him that when he and I were in the woods, we were sure we heard them too when we were young. Well, said Uncle Burton, they're still there, but if they build that goddamn highway, won't nobody be able to hear them. Maybe not ever again. The old place had been renovated, rewired, but the ghost was still there. In the timbers, his voice a loose piece of tin conversing with the westerly wind. I put the key in the tractor's ignition, but it is his hand turns it. Reaching into the Oliver's old toolbox, his arm reaches in too, helping me search out a block of wood, a length of chain. It was a good thing Uncle Burton had died happy a year ago. Instead of seeing the bottomland dissected by the bypass, the stream choked with debris, its special powers silenced by an oily film, the soccer fields replacing tobacco, the chemicals green the turf, run off into the groundwater so they still get cancer, those kids, their parents doing all that driving. Used to be a night like this was filled with croakers and lightning bugs, but now it's nothing but brake lights and car horns. If man had been meant to drive, God would have made him with his middle finger eternally extended. It was a good thing Uncle Burton had died a year ago happy. Train engineers don't even blow their own whistles anymore. Sure, it's safer. The computer never forgets. Maybe all that safety will give us space to spin yarns like vibrant, transcendent spiders, orbs of energy, or maybe we will just atrophy in a casing that lacks sweet sap, nourishment. The power company murdered the mammoth oak in the pasture, paved it over. I sold the last of the cows and became wholly convinced Uncle Burton had died happy a year ago. And that's my regional poem. It's from a book about two brothers. It was a whole regional idea of two brothers living on the last of a family farm, sold over and over again over generations, living in a trailer now, raising rabbits, stealing goats, making drugs, one bad idea after another, until they kill me and the guy I wrote it with at a poetry reading one night when they break in a house raid. So in West Asheville. So here's all about. Hey, I'm so glad. All right. Sorry about the time slipping away. Under the gun slinger. Domes. Authenticity is the new perfection. Domes and bowls. Isaac Newton was, among other things, an alchemist who studied and translated ancient texts. The Emerald Tablet, which begins, "'Tis true without lying, certain most true, that which is below is like that which is above. That which is above is like that which is below." To do the miracles of one thing only. I almost talked about bowls that are in movies. For instance, I have a bowl that's like a bowl that's in Lars von Trier's Melancholia. I have some bowls that are nesting bowls that are in the movie with Roy Scheider called The 7 Ups. They're in an hour and 3 minutes and 3 seconds in are these bowls, and that's part of the history of Bollywood. Olson's bowl is a wide-mouth bowl whose contents need to breathe. Olson's bowl is a wide-mouth bowl that allows the heat to evenly dissipate. Otherwise, this chunky soup would be too hot to eat. Orwell's bowl is a deep, deep bowl with contents much pureed. Orwell's bowl is a deep, deep bowl whose depths do hold such heat. Otherwise, this pureed soup might be too cold to eat. The Axis Mundi, Delphi, the bowl, the history of the bowl is the navel of the world. My son at the wheel fashioning a new navel of the world, my son. There are two bowls in a saddle-shaped universe. Let's have dinner. Alone and outwards, geo-odyssey and poetry. Poetry is the best way to position yourself within a varying gravity field. Then, like a cyclops, it closes up the hole with a stone, and you've got to be a goddamned hero to log it out. Find escape. Sometimes I consider renaming AMS after at a previous reviewing Black Mountain College, someone read a poem about a chicken coop that was a dome, a geodesic chicken coop. I went home and thought about that. I thought about this thing the poet said, that the chickens produce more eggs. So I built a little dome, a poetry coop, and I sat inside it hoping to produce more poems. But I laid an egg instead, and then it became clear to me that the purpose of the dome was to produce egg shapes, which have their own special natural design and elegant design, a naturally occurring ovoid. So, in a sense, I performed a projective geometric verse when I laid the egg. And what is an egg but two nesting bowls assembled as domes? You can't read the last part there. I had something to say and I said it. Every other poem is sometimes a brush with the divine, a shock, a connection. Ben Franklin's Key, riding a kite in a storm. But I said it with the seed, and every other poem is just a Zen guise of the same thing. The electricity is there, but the illumination is not the same. This is not a supine dome. It's very tense. There's some tensegrity up in here. Insert poem here. These days are a wind falling. This open wound, the sky. These days are a wind falling from the open wound in the sky. I bent myself against that blow and so stretched out farther than the farthest star. I wished myself into the smallness of a raindrop. A seed became the size of a tree. Where were you when the first blades, grass pushed themselves up from an earth's skin? You were in the world, you were of the world, and you were the world. And yet you knew it not, as a fish is in the sea, is of the sea, and is the sea, and yet knows it not. You have not been born, and so you do not live, and so you won't die. That's a promise. Probably the first occasion upon which I read my poetry in public was at a local college. An English instructor approached me afterwards, and he patted me on the back, a large man with a red beard. His mitt felt like a bear paw slapping me. My lungs felt like salmon leaping desperately up a waterfall. "Pope," he said, his voice reminding me again of a bear, "you reminded me of a young Whitman up there reading." "Thank you, thanks a lot," I said with little concealed enthusiasm. The bear continued, "Mind you, I never liked Whitman." Well, that may not have put me in my place, but it put me in a place. As usual, I had no idea what the bear man wanted. Was he serious or not? I have trouble deciding oftentimes, in fact always, if people are serious or not. I have trouble even knowing if the people are in fact people, or if they are in fact bears or elks or antelopes or eagles or salmon throwing themselves up falls to spawn, some of them butterflies and bees. It is hard to keep track. Some buzz, others growl, all breathe. This breathing is the basis of poetry. Besides the words, notes take place in space. Breath makes music and allows it to breathe. A brook babbles and unbabbles. The space, the field. At that moment, I knew nothing about Whitman, and at this moment, I know little more. I'm glad I don't follow, or rather cannot follow instructions well, or indeed follow manifestos, unless they be incomprehensible manifestos. Only then do they spark, cause me to turn or overflow my banks, memory and all. A river has memory banks too. As a writer and an artist, you know this too. As a writer and an artist or an educator, you may know poetics. I don't. And for this I am regretful, and yet for this, from the third bank of the river I float happy, joy-filled to the end of my trumpet, overflowing the rim of this trumpet, blowing from the end of this trumpet like an unmad man, playing as a player who learned every note then refused to listen to jazz. No Miles, no Bird, no Charlie. And see what came from your own horn that felt right. Hear the vibration of breath in the air and know that it is yours and the universe together. Welcome. Forcing its way into the world, no more so than a morel springs up, and no less strange and beautiful and fleeting. Fleet foxes are to be held in esteem, fleets of ships are not. The fact that I make the former statement here in a brief but serious survey of projected verse and American poetics, or perhaps human or humane poetics, created by beings living what in our conscious is currently perceiving to be a place called America, in both geography of place and in the mind as an idea, is indeed proof of Olson's visionary exclamations that they hold water, as do the banks of the Mississippi, the Euphrates, or the Amazon. Fleet foxes are worth worshiping in moments. Fleets of ships should all be sunken forever, occurs to me, and beyond all established sense, has no place in this speech. Yet I insert it, or rather it insists that it stays. That is true and somehow relevant to the discussion. And just as someday anti-gravity may be discovered, as surely as the New World lay waiting for those explorers before, indeed the natives are already waiting on the shores of anti-gravity for it to be discovered. In that moment that already exists, maybe we'll understand why lines regarding fleet foxes and fleets of ships must stay. Perhaps as I have often thought, I am a receiver, my voice a speaker, and my hand a movable type, an occult hand, moving across the page, leaving sediment like a river, as unconsciously as a river. The energy of my voice speeds along and smashes into energy, and the result of a poem's energy as it collides with the listener has yet to be observed inside a super collider. That experiment may explain what we already know and yet sometimes doubt. Destructive poetics, gushing that the preface of Leaves of Grass is the single most important document in American poetics. My joy, my reason why I will never or can never return to any straight path if indeed I were ever on it. The reason is those born under the Metrodome don't recognize me as myself. The reason they see me as something else, while I see and understand that they are stars, clouds, bees, waves seen and unseen, elks and trout ponds, rivers, lakes, mountains, seas. I met a woman who was a woman but also a mountain on Mars. But no one recognizes that I am missing, except Pound and Olson recognizing me as the dramatic presentation I am. Anyway, Pound with his American poet this and his American poet that. Maybe they were a little caught up in themselves, the Americans. Hell, anyone could hardly see that global warming, a long thaw, the sinking of Atlantis, the anointing of Antarctica, an end of history. Johnny Appleseed, here's an American poem. Johnny Appleseed, American Dionysus. Remember him when that cider hits your lips, when that sweetness cracks its whip. So red, spotted with a hawk eye, wrapped in barbed wire. So delicious, dedicate a chant. Oh, I've been alone, I've been dethroned, I walked through the poppies in the field, I've been taken up into outer space, but even when the aliens dissected me, they could not get the mask off of my face. So the UFO set me back down in your Gothic garden where rich witches ride broomstick dildos, the pagan. I hurry past them into the gymnasium, the classic, where I am, instructed in the art of war, Eastern classic, by some jaded Obi-Wan Kenobi, pop culture co-opting Eastern classic and watering it down. The little man with the yellow hat, carrying the scroll that is sealed with wax, the girl in blue with the silver flute, her melody flies straight and true. The man in black with a jug of wine, is it sour? Is it divine? The courtesan with her raven hair, all the avant-gardes want to place their flowers there. I've been known as a pain in the ass, rattling shackles through the gates of hell and back. Somos Dias de Muertos. Keep me on your good side or I'll stay out your bad. Drag out the Victrola, old soul and sad, because this muse could use a muse to back it up. So anyway, Pound with his American poet this and American poet that, I admit it. I love watching Pound rip somebody a new asshole, but when it's WCW that may be shitting out of two holes, well, it hurts me worse than it did either of them, or maybe not as much as WCW. It had to have hurt. Yet look at the resolve, look at the work that flows after the dam break of improvisations 1920. WCW is Cora come hell or high water, or barbs and bear traps set by fellow poets. Alone, he paddles outwards. From here, in the middle, he can see both banks and an afternoon moon. Now the moon is the face of an elk. The moon is a clam. A great swarm of insects sweep across it. The tribe, the extended family that produced the individual who first fashioned a bowl from anything other than a turtle or a crab shell or half a nutshell, made sounds about the moon, sounds the tribe understood. The moon was a bowl, and that each day a magnificent, unknowable animal, probably a moose, would come to drink from it. And when all the water was gone, it would begin to fill again. For the first family tribe, this was the resurrection story. This was the promise of renewal. It was buds of new antlers. That's what it was. So I'm jogging the trails down beside the lake. The sounds I hear clearly, my heart pounding and birds singing. Charles Olson sort of rose up out of the lake as though absolved of gravity or resolved of anti-gravity. Not Excalibur, a broken bottle in one hand and the shell of a turtle in his left, as though prepared for battle. Are you Arthur? No, I'm author. Roared, was it laughter? Olson settles, his toes flexing, squishing mud and goof shit between them. Olson's toes at the lake's edge look like butterflies, butterflies flexing their wings. Now he doesn't have a broken bottle in his hand. It's a mayfly, cupped there gently, its tiny fly eyes surveying the inside of Charles Olson's cupped palm, inside his fist as it were. They were, say, thinking outside the box, and I was thinking outside Charles Olson's closed fist. From the point he puts himself in the open, he can go no other way than the poem declares for itself. Charles Olson. This vision of Olson's absolves me more surely than any crucifixion can. It's not why I don't change things and receive messages, because I won't know Olson for another 100 years. It's because they are received messages. Who am I to judge? If I let the ego in, it might become a novelty. That's great, says Olson. clad in a breastplate of an ancient snapper, a cooter that must have lived 400 years and put on a pound for every one of them. He has a bath towel around his middle. You have a point, of course. Olson leans in. Has your ear any acquisitions? Me, plenty. Olson, enough? Maybe not, but plenty of. Olson, notes of America? Me, notes in the middle and around the edges? Play them. Play them for 1,000 years, and I will rise up from the lake again, clad in an armor of broken glass. Olson looks at me gravely, tilts his head. Look, it doesn't matter how the ego got there, it's there. Me. You know what I think about the late Elizabethans? Olson. Who cares? Me. I think they were pregnant. Olson. With what? Me. Nothing like the UFC. Olson. He says nothing. He searches for a flat rock. He picks it up and skips it across the lake. It skips many times. I swear I think I saw it go to the opposite bank. Me. I decided I used I too many times, and that was a milestone. Olson, you're millstones. I said milestone. Reality is in flux, and so are objects. Stones walk on water. Me, Whitman, it's all Song of Solomon to me, man. Whitman is into his thing, but I'm not surrounded by transcendentalists. Giant sores on the people living in the geographical area now known consciously as North America by the people who decide such things, by the people who accept whatever reality is most acceptable. It's a state of mind. You aren't creating America, you are perpetuating America. Stop. Your ethos jester can write only one line at a time that causes several lines to hypersect. There, X, I said it, and there, X. Poetry flows from the natural world, and our relationship to the natural world is science. Empirical understanding of our location in a universe. Understanding is the basis of a productive relationship. Maybe not a science of literature, but literature of science. As an artist or writer, you too know that art is inspired by what is seen, and what is seen with a scientific method or tools is no different from what is touched, seen, heard, experienced. Let layers be peeled, strip the filters, look at pink without knowing the term pink, even the term color. Let us understand color. Let us explore light until we understand darkness. There isn't enough poetry about regenerated limbs, organs, or immortality, but sometime, and at that time, poetry will be reduced to a single slender volume. Best of the humans, curated by post-humans. But now, like, if you were walking and you saw a flower, and it really caught your eye, this flower, and you're in a field or woods and no one cared if you would take this flower or instead take a picture of this flower, and for you a photo is good enough, a picture. But if you remember this flower, if you seeing this flower in that moment sensation, that's what a poem should be. A flower that people see, no more. This flower, among billions of white flowers, on a hillside in Asia, plucked from the stem, taken in, and crushed into perfume. It was hard not to use bloom in that last poem because it rhymes with perfume. At night on the grounds of Black Mountain College, sometimes you can smell the smoke of Michael Roomaker burning 3 feet of manuscripts in a 50-gallon drum. One of the group that got to follow him around campus, he seemed pretty excited to see where he used to do the dishes. It must have been fun because he really lit up at the dishwashing station in the kitchen by Lake Eden. I was set up to read poetry again as part of the Minor American series. I'm going to cut some of this. How are we doing on time? I just need to stop.
It's 4:59, and the next session timer starts at 5.
Okay.
Is timer in this
Yeah.
room?
Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah. Okay. 1 minute.
You pick up more.
I was, at this time, sweat pouring down Olson's brow, expression of complete concentration. A single hand holding a bag of sand as though weighing it carefully. He pulls some of it forth and sprinkles it before him like fairy dust. A bit more he pours on the ground, draws the string taut on the pouch again. A Mayan idol stood on a stone altar before him. Olson, in one deft motion, reaches out, snatches up the idol in one hand, and slides the bag of sand into its place with the other. There is a moment in which nothing happens. Neither of us breathes. Then the temple we are under begins to shake. Gone are the stars, Olson shouting as we run. If the object of our desire is on a mountaintop, we will build a temple to the mountain and hide beneath its floorboards. Look, I had a dream. The First Punic War. People worrying about their team losing. I can dig it. Every night my chest hurts when I think about Hannibal's loss. What thou lovest well shall not be reft from thee. What thou lovest well is thy true heritage. Ezra Pound. People think the people in the past make a difference in their lives, but it's only the people in the present that are making a difference.
It's 5 o'clock, so I'll let you negotiate with Tom as to how many you do.
How you doing, Dad?
Not even that much. That
Go
much.
for it.
Olson paddles out alone in a lake that is no longer a lake. All bodies of water are one body of water, and Olson is no longer Olson. All literature is one literature, and Olson is now all poets. All writers are bodies of water, each and every one of them. And so all lakes, rivers, tributaries, aquifers, oceans, clouds, all bodies of water, one body of water, one body full of nerves, neurons, elements, proteins, chemicals, compounds. So, Olson, sew your fucking lips shut. Are you almost done? Me, almost. The banks of our memory of rivers, our memory rivers' banks, have been programmed all wrong. He is rowing now. Maybe he is rowing needles. Poems are not dead on the page, it's a fact. Most people suck in, reading to themselves or anyone else, except that once in this land lived poets who now haunted as ghosts, or that in this land we are haunted by poets who once were ghosts.
I'll send you some.
I've been writing for like 3 years. I've actually seen all the poetry in front of me. That much raw on my reading.
Oh, I don't know all that, right?
I don't know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but yeah, all stuff for rain. Thank you. What are you doing?
We ready? Alright, clean the house out. Hard act to follow. Alright. So, okay, this Cyborg's Dichotomous Shift in Edward Jordan Slinger by me. In the year when we're celebrating Buckminster Fullerene, more commonly known as Buckyballs. Buckyballs, right? Alright. Or carbon 60, C60 as the building blocks for nanotubes, which theoretical physicist Dr. Michio Kaku calls part of the next technological front. Buckyballs are, quote, the largest